It's been a while, hasn't it? Welcome back to Focus Attack Tech Corner. While we've been quiet for some time, it's not been due to a lack of activity on our part. Today I'm happy to present our latest major release, the Razer Panthera all-button and Noir conversion panel kits. These kits are something that have been pretty heavily requested of us for quite some time, and with the release of this video, I'm happy to announce that they're finally available. This double feature video will be our most involved one yet, as this is a major conversion and all aspects of it need to be thoroughly addressed. We're also now accepting artwork submissions for this conversion kit, so you can purchase with confidence and be ready to play in style when you receive your order. Before we go any further, I'd like to extend my thanks to AllFightsticks for their huge hand in this project. It wouldn't have been possible without them, so please also check them out. This conversion kit is designed specifically for any variant of the first generation Razer Panthera. Each bundle comes with the conversion plate, artwork, and proper plexi. The Panthera Evo will not work here due to being a completely different design. On this side of the video, we will be showing you the Noir conversion from start to finish. Clear space and let's get started. Let's talk about the tools you're going to need, and the tools that you might want to have to help this process along. I recommend keeping around a screwdriver with good leverage and a reversible bit, or both a Phillips screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver. You will have a few screws that will need to be dealt with using this. I also recommend having smaller tech drivers intended for smaller electronics parts. The 30mm snap-out tool from Buttercade isn't required, but it's extremely useful here, especially if you intend to reuse your original buttons. What is absolutely required here is some sort of controlled heating method. In my case, I am using my temperature-controlled heat gun. You could use a blow dryer set on high heat here, but in all honesty, a heat gun is king. In addition to this, I strongly recommend a Dremel with a cutting tool attached or a file. This job can certainly be completed without it, but it definitely helps. The more prepared you are tool-wise, the less of a hassle this will be. I also recommend the Buttercade Fast 110 release tool in the event that your quick disconnects are stubborn or crimped tightly. It's not required, but again, it always helps. Last but not least, I always keep my wire stripping and crimping tool nearby, just in case of emergency. It's nice to have in the event that something goes wrong. In the case of this Noir conversion, we recommend keeping an 8mm hex nut driver handy. We do have these in our store should you need one. Well, shall we get started? This conversion begins in the simplest of ways, pressing the hatch button to open the arcade stick. Start by removing unnecessary items from the Panthera's inner compartment. This would include the Panthera's USB cable, any spare ball top or bat top handles you might have, spare buttons, and if you're feeling keen, you can remove the storage containers by simply unscrewing the Phillips screws holding them down. When that's done, let's take a look at the joystick. Begin by unplugging the 5-pin harness plug from your joystick. Mine might look a little different from yours, but the principle is still the same. The connector shouldn't require much fuss, just slide it off the joystick's connections. We won't be seeing it for a while. Next, we will need to remove the joystick mounting screw that secures the 5-pin harness additional ground cable. This is a Phillips head screw and where your good screwdriver will come into play. Make sure your screwdriver fits well to avoid stripping the head of the screw. Once you're ready, turn the screw counterclockwise to loosen it until it's completely removed. Once that's done, set the screw aside in a safe place. You can then tuck the 5-pin harness out of the way so it doesn't obstruct your workspace. We can come back to it later. The next step is to disconnect all the cables running to the buttons. Depending on your Panthera's condition and age, this may be very easy or slightly annoying, rarely in between. If your quick disconnects on your cables are stubborn, the Buttercade Fast 110 quick release tool is very handy here. Mine is an older model, but the newest one is available on our store. In the case of my Panthera, I won't need it as the cables have been disconnected many times, but this may not be the case for you. When you're ready to proceed, start unplugging all of the buttons. I typically recommend that folks take photos of their wiring before disconnecting anything, but the Panthera has a nice reference panel on the inside to tell you what goes where. So long as that diagram's intact, you shouldn't have to worry about getting it right on reinstall. Next, we will need to remove all of the push buttons. This is where the Buttercade 30mm snap out tool really shines. For those of you that are tired of sore fingers or fighting stubborn panels, I can't recommend this tool enough. It makes uninstalling buttons from virtually any panel a breeze. Regardless of whether you have the tool or not, remove all 8 30mm push buttons from the Panthera's control panel. When you're finished, set them aside somewhere safe. Moving forward, we'll return to the joystick. There are still 3 Phillips head screws keeping the joystick attached to the body, but we'll first want to remove the ball top handle from the joystick shaft. This can be done by inserting the flathead side of your screwdriver into the slot at the bottom of the joystick shaft. This will keep the shaft in place so that it won't turn while loosening the ball top handle. Keeping the screwdriver in the slot, twist the ball top handle counterclockwise to break its torque. You can add a little counter force from the screwdriver side for a stubborn ball top or bat top handle. Once the torque has been broken, loosen the handle the rest of the way until it can be removed and set aside. Remove the shaft cover and dust washer by simply pulling away from the joystick, and set those aside as well. Now the joystick can safely be removed. You will want to turn the remaining 3 Phillips head screws by turning them counterclockwise. Fully loosen and remove all 3 screws and then set them aside in a safe place. Put aside the joystick as well, and the additional lower dust washer if it's present. Congratulations on making it this far, but this is now where the real meat of the project begins. The Razer Panthera is somewhat notorious for being easy to work on, but a bit of a nightmare when it comes to installing custom artwork. The original artwork is printed on the Panthera's plexi, and it is fixed to the upper panel using a strong bonding adhesive. In most cases, it cannot simply be pried off. The glue is very strong. To proceed forward, we must remove the original Panthera art. This is where the heat gun comes into play. It should be said that heat guns are not toys. You should exercise extreme caution while using one, as you could potentially hurt yourself or things around you if you're not careful. It's recommended to do this in an area away from highly flammable materials, so if you need to relocate your project, now would be the time to do so. The goal here is to gradually heat up the entirety of the Panthera's plexiglass panel cover so that the adhesive becomes more workable, allowing the plexi to separate from the rest of the panel. You will want to take extreme care to avoid both staying in one place for too long and also not accidentally direct heat towards the functions array of the panel. Heat guns are fully capable of melting whatever is in their path, so don't linger in one place for too long, and also don't use the heat gun right against the panel. In this case, I will set my heat gun to 950 degrees Fahrenheit on the high setting. Do your best to follow the pattern demonstrated here, taking breaks as necessary. This will take a good bit of time to get sorted out, so don't rush it along. If you can't already tell, this part of the video is very much sped up and not indicative of how long it could take on average. Work the panel over until it is pliable enough to slip a small, rigid but flat object in between the plexi and the panel. In my case, I'm using a small flathead tech driver here, and then I'm graduating onto a bigger screwdriver. The goal here is to get the adhesive at least started on letting go. The more you work it over, the bigger the object you will be able to slip in between both sides. It might seem unconventional, but my drywall spreader came to my rescue here. However, as you can see, the plexi still isn't quite ready to let go. If you're in the same spot I am in this case, the answer is, you guessed it, more heat. Again, be careful with the heat gun, but don't be shy about getting your point across. Continue to stay away from the functions panel while doing so. Once you've applied more heat, go back to prying with your favorite flat object of choice. The Panthera's plexi cover needs a lot of convincing to be completely removed. If you need to, apply heat again. Just keep doing this in a pattern. Heat, pry, heat, pry, heat, pry. It's a little stubborn, isn't it? Believe in yourself and eventually you will be successful in removing the old art. Once it's finally off, you can set it aside. In a lot of cases, it might be broken and unusable, so keep it as a trophy or discard it into the trash, your choice. With our dirty work completed and the actual panel revealed to the world, we can proceed once more. If you choose, you can use Goo Gone to get any residue off the original panel. In my case, it won't be used again, so I'm going to set it aside. Open the Panthera once again. There are 6 small Phillips head screws that keep the functions panel attached to the Panthera's upper lid. The screws will need to be removed so that the functions panel can be pulled from the upper lid. Your Phillips tech driver will come in handy here. These can be removed the same as the previous screws. Turn counterclockwise until they're fully loosened and then pull them out. Take care to catch them as they come out, as they can fall between the upper lid and the lower enclosure. Once the screws have been removed, pull out the panel and let it rest in the enclosure. Next, we are going to take a look at the upper lid's left hinge on the inside of the enclosure. Specifically, we're looking at the 3 Phillips head screws that keep the upper part of the hinge fastened to the lid. All 3 of these screws need to be removed. This is a required step that is necessary due to the spacer bracket obstructing a single screw that keeps the original panel in place. Remove all 3 upper hinge screws, but keep them close by. You will need them again shortly. You may notice the lid drooping slightly due to a lack of support from the left hinge once the screws are removed. This is normal. Do your best to support it in the meantime. Behind the hinge on the Panthera's lid, the plastic spacer bracket has now been made available for access. It is also held in by 3 Phillips head screws. As this is a bit of a tighter fit, I recommend using your Phillips head tech driver here. Remove all 3 Phillips head screws securing the plastic spacer bracket, set them aside, and then pull out the plastic spacer. Once the spacer has been pulled, you now have access to the single hidden screw. As mentioned before, the original panel cannot be removed without having dealt with this screw. Remove the single Phillips head screw and set it aside. You won't need it any longer. Once the screw is removed, you can reinstall the plastic spacer using its 3 Phillips head screws. Installation is the opposite of removal, so clockwise to tighten the screws. Line up the lid with the left side hinge, then retrieve the left side hinge screws you removed earlier and reinstall them as well. Good and tight works best here. Be careful to avoid stripping the screw heads by way of over-tightening. Bear in mind that this is a major structural support of the arcade stick, so don't leave anything loose. Put the functions array safely in the lower enclosure, then close the stick once more. We can now finally remove the original panel. There are 8 screws here in total that need to be completely removed before the panel can be lifted up off of the Panthera and set aside. The 2 screws at the bottom center are responsible for keeping the Panthera's button latch in place, so I prefer to remove them last. These 2 screws, along with the screw just below the top left corner, are the only screws we are keeping moving forward. Once all screws have been removed, lift the panel off the Panthera's lid and set it aside. Now we need to prep for surgery, as part of the Panthera's lid can cause obstructions during button installation on the new panel. While this isn't required in all cases, if you intend to do this, I recommend reinstalling the 2 screws that keep the Panthera's latch in place. This will keep the lid from walking on you while you're filing or cutting. Make sure the latch is aligned with the screw holes and then reinstall the latch screws. Let's take a look at the trouble area in question. The spot shown can potentially cause difficult installation or removal of buttons on the conversion panels. You don't need a great deal of material shaved off, even filing can get the job done here. In my case, I made a notch with my screwdriver to use as a reference for my cutting tool. You can use a Sharpie or whatever you might prefer. Whatever the method, do be careful when working with sharp tools. I'm going to use my Dremel to shave off the necessary space I need here. When you're finished cutting, remove the latch screws once more and reopen the Panthera. It's time to reinstall the function panel. Mount it back in place on the lid and reinstall the 6 Phillips head screws that keep it fixed in place. Like always, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Take care to not drop any of the screws in between the lid and the lower enclosure. Before the Noir panel can be installed, a few things have to be done to prepare it for the install. Your kit should have arrived with a set of joystick hardware, including 4 screws, 4 washers, 4 nuts, and 4 nylon nuts. First, the screws have to be seated into their holes on the panel. After that, a washer must be installed on each screw thread on the other side. The nuts have to be securely fastened on top of these washers, and then the nylon nuts will be used to tighten down the joystick. This is somewhat difficult to show in a video, but I'll do my best to demonstrate here. First, install your screws as shown. Turn the panel around and then retrieve your washers and put one on each screw thread. These will hang loosely until the next step. Once that's done, retrieve the nuts and finger tighten them down while keeping the screw from spinning. You'll now want to use a proper fitting Phillips screwdriver to keep the screws locked into place, and then use your other hand to turn your hex nut driver, tightening the nuts down fully. Again, this is somewhat difficult to show, but this step is important. Make sure to tighten the nuts well so that they don't come loose going forward. Once finished, verify that everything is locked in and is seated before moving to the next step. Check your work! Not getting this correct can mean going back and creating a hassle for yourself. Now it is time to reinstall your joystick. Take care to make sure that the orientation of the joystick is correct. In my case, the 5-pin connection will be on the bottom left side with the panel upside down. Once it's mounted, you can install the nylon nuts and finger tighten them. You will need your hex nut driver to tighten them the rest of the way, as the nylon will prevent you from tightening beyond a point. Once all nuts are mounted, you can use your driver to tighten them down most of the rest of the way. I'm fairly particular about wanting to center the joystick on the mounts as best as I can, so if you want to do it before fully tightening, now is the time to do so. With the joystick installed, we can proceed forward. We're making good progress, so keep at it. It's time to return to the Panthera. With the lid open, make sure that the panel latch is in place by pushing it upward as far as it can go. Close the panel gently and keep your finger on it to keep it closed. With your free hand, grab the Noir panel and place it in its spot on the Panthera. Take the 2 Phillips screws responsible for securing the latch and reinstall them, tightening as necessary. Take the short Phillips screw and install it in the screw hole that is just below the top left one. And at long last, you can finally install your artwork. Line it up as best as you can. It doesn't need to be perfect right now. Retrieve your plexi and lay it on top of the artwork. Now would be the time to line everything up as close as possible, taking note of hole alignment. After that, take the included M4x12mm TE screws along with your 2.5mm hex key and install the 5 screws in the remaining screw holes. Finger tighten them to get them started, and then tighten them the rest of the way with the hex key. Be careful not to over tighten too much, as you could damage the plexi. After that, you can reinstall your dust washer and ball top handle. Open the Panthera's lid once again. You will need to retighten the ball top handle so that it does not come loose while playing. This works the same way as before, only in the opposite direction. Use your flathead to keep the shaft from moving and firmly tighten the ball top handle. We can now install our buttons. You'll need 8 of your 30mm buttons here. Seat them well and check to make sure that they're properly installed and not uneven. When you're done, open the Panthera's lid once again. There is a ground cable attached to the 5-pin connector that needs to be installed under the bottom left nut of the joystick. Remove the bottom left nut so that you can do so. With the nut removed, slip the ground cable's ring connector onto the open screw thread. And then replace the nut and retighten. Take care to support the ground cable wire while tightening, as the nut will try to make it walk with every turn. Verify that it is fastened down well and we can proceed. Reconnect your 5-pin harness connector to the joystick's PCB. Last but not least is reconnecting your button wiring. One of the things I enjoy the most about the Panthera is that it is very difficult to screw up reconnecting button wires. As the diagram can do a better job than anyone of showing you what goes where, I will let this part speak for itself, and you can follow along at your own leisure. See? Not too bad, right? Just like that, we're finished, and your new Noir Panthera is ready to rock. So long as you follow this video to a T, you should have no issues whatsoever with your build. Like anything else, playtest thoroughly, and if you miss something, go back and check your work. I've said it before, but this is our most ambitious video yet. Thanks for hanging in there all the way through. As always, if you enjoyed the video, like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.